Hello there, thank you for staying with us and welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I'm Victor Matthias. Now, the fourth industrial revolution, which we are currently witnessing, comes with new challenges and opportunities as well. Now, with what is now termed careers for the 21st century, it is expected that proactive measures are taken in order for those opportunities to be maximized from mode of learning, working, trading, and even governing, as the future is now right at our doorsteps. But before we go into all of this, let's first take a look at the trending topics in the past week.
This trended as some Nigerians marked what they referred to as #Biafra Remembrance Day to honor the memory of those who died in the civil war fought between the Nigerian government headed by General Yakubu Gowon and the secessionist state of Biafra led by Lieutenant Colonel Odumegu Ojukwu from 6th July 1967 to 15th January 1970. Nigerians tweeted archived pictures depicting the severity of the war as discussions cutting across issues affecting the Igbos were raised. Nigerians on social media trended the hashtag Justice for Comfort Benjamin, a 16-year-old girl who was reportedly abducted, raped and murdered by unknown persons in Jos Plateau State. Those who reacted to the trend called on security agencies to unravel the identities of those who perpetrated the dastardly act and ensure they are prosecuted. The debate on whether to scrap the National Youth Service Corps raged on social media much more than it did at the House of Representatives. There were mixed reactions on the topic, with some saying the scheme has outlived its essence, while others believe otherwise. According to them, despite the existence of the scheme, Nigeria is bitterly divided across ethnic and religious lines, the main reason the NYSC was established to bridge the gap.
Well, there you go. Those were some of the most talked about hashtags in the past week, but you can be a part of the conversation from wherever you're watching around the world. Just tweet at us at Channels TV, at Channels Beam, at Vector_MBIDI. You can also use the hashtag Channels Beam. But joining us now to look at today's topic, we have with us right here in the Lagos studio, Dr. Sam Ayomogbe. He is a doctor of philosophy and a professional in strategic thinking and innovation. He is an advocate of lifelong learning. He writes and trains on topics ranging from child education, parenting, retirement preparation, entrepreneurship, and personal development planning. He is right here in our Lagos studio. It's a pleasure to have you today on the program.
Thank you so much.
Of course. We also have joining us via Zoom, Olayinka Obafisoye. She is an accomplished education practitioner with well over 15 years of teaching and leading experience. Her career is born out of a passion to be an effective instrument of positive change in the education sector. It's a pleasure to have you as well on the program today. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Hello, thank you, but I can't hear you. I can't hear anything, sorry.
Okay, I'm sure we'll fix that as the program goes on, but just hold on right there.
It's better now.
Okay, indeed.
It's better now.
Thanks for coming on the program again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Indeed, you're welcome. Well, just before we kickstart this conversation, let's take a look at a convention, an education convention that was convened to prepare students and graduates alike for the future of work.
The outbreak of COVID-19 and the lockdown that followed brought to the fore new ways of doing things. From learning to business, communication to governance, things are no longer the same, with what is now described as the new normal taking center stage. Along with these changes comes a shift in job opportunities, which had made schools to begin rethinking their curricula in order to adapt, adjust, and achieve in a world that is rapidly changing and moving towards the fourth industrial revolution. It is for these reasons that experts in the education and tech sector have gathered virtually to chart a course that will prepare students and graduates for the future of work.
We've always been intentional and quite deliberate about technology, but we realized that we had to be more. We had to assess. Was it everybody? Did it cut across every single personnel? We had to assess that. And where we observed a few deficiencies, trainings had to go on, mentoring had to go on. And where we're at right now, Dr. Mo, I can say to you that we're thinking beyond learning platforms. We're beginning to think about artificial intelligence.
The real question within that space is going to be, where does technology start and where does it actually end? For those who think it's going to end, they continue to make adjustments, and these are micro adjustments, and they stabilize the environment and they get things kind of like okay, and there's a little bit of discomfort here and there. But for those who understand that we've made a fundamental transition from a time when technology was an add-on to education to an environment in which technology is the education, you understand that there's no end to it. And knowing that there's no end to it also calls on us to think differently around what will the next 100 years be like. And as we're trying to decide on what we're doing today, our thoughts have to turn to what the next 100 years will be like. What kind of is going to be required? What kind of education is going to be required? How will that education be delivered? How does that education change? The pace at which knowledge itself is changing is completely unprecedented in human history. It's changing in exponential ways.
With growing numbers of 21st century jobs, experts believe more technology-driven models of learning should be adopted by schools in order to supply the demand that is being created by technology, as the World Bank projects that job automation is the future of work.
But if you look at the job market now, you're seeing jobs like, huge jobs in data analytics, in cybersecurity, in digital marketing, in robotics, software development, innovations that are happening rapidly in agri-tech, ed-tech, fintech, mobile transactions. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the world that we're in. The future of work is here already.
With the World Bank projection that 2/3 of jobs will be automated in the nearest future, other speakers prefer solution on how schools can integrate 21st century skills in their daily learning delivery and called for government support, especially in public schools, so no one will be left behind.
Well, Dr. Sam, let me just start from where Mrs. D'Souza talked about the huge jobs that are now in circulation. She talked about cybersecurity, data analytics, and the likes. Do you think we are ready for this future that is already staring us, in our faces?
Okay, thank you. In answering your question, I want to take the approach of what needs to be done, because obviously we are not ready, because things are changing. You talk about cybersecurity, you talk about artificial intelligence, the robotic, machine learning, and some of these things are obviously not in our curriculum. So we need to, and when you talk about education, when you talk about curriculum, you have to start from the kindergarten, the primary school, the secondary school, the foundation basically, and you have to align them. So, and also talking about the future, you need to also bring the historical perspective into it, like where we're coming from, then the current situation and the future. But the best way to handle all these things, because the fundamental issue is to look at concepts and framework, conceptual framework and theoretical framework of what has worked for other countries or what is working for other countries. For instance, you have online education, you have brick and mortar education. To what extent do we in Nigeria support virtual learning? I got recently, one of the universities in Nigeria, they were going home and they pre-enrolled the students for Coursera. When the children get home, the student gets home, they have to take some courses on Coursera. Of course, the parents will pay for it, but the cost they will pay for is not limited to the school. It's the choice of the child and the parents. That's innovation. It's happening in Nigeria. So every other school should take a lead to those that are, because definitely those are using framework of the developed countries. So if you want to now relax, is the old curriculum we are using, it has to be the teacher comes to the class. You wait for COVID-19 to go forever. Maybe it's still not going, but we need to start embracing technology because that's the future. we are.
All right, let me quickly bring in Ms. Obafisoye, who is joining us via Zoom from Lagos. Well, you are the educationist, so tell us, I mean, what do you think schools can be doing? You know, how do you think our curricula can be rejigged? Or, I mean, like we have always been calling for constitutional review and the like. So in terms of education, in terms of our curricula, what do you think can be done to accommodate courses that would prepare people or students, you know, for jobs like data analytics and the like cybersecurity? I mean, all of these jobs that are termed the 21st century jobs.
Thank you very much. And once again, thank you for having me. Yes, like never before, schools, educators would have to review their curriculum or their curricula. Times have changed, times are still changing. How changed the times have been when, you know, things go to, you know, a level of normalcy we do not know. But one thing that we know is, I agree very much with one of my colleagues who said that the future is here. Indeed, the future is here. What can schools do? Schools need to sit with a curriculum. They need to review, they need to assess, they need to test for relevance. They need to be sure that what the curriculum is intended to do, which is to prepare the children, not just for the future, but to also equip them, to make them relevant to their present. So schools would have to assess their curriculum, every school head. To be honest, even in rural areas, school heads, school owners, the government, we would have to look at the curriculum to ensure that it is still relevant. And even when you find that it is relevant, you must ask some questions. How relevant is it? You also need to ask, is it adequately and effectively preparing our children for now and for their future? So one of the things that you must look at is communication. I know that technology is big and we all must be intentional and deliberate about technology. But we have other things that we need to look at. For example, the 4 C's. So when you look at communication, in my community, in Meadowhall, for example, medical education, we're quite intentional about that. We have communication, we have collaboration, we have critical thinking, and we have creativity. Now, can we imbibe technology in all of these skills? Absolutely. But of what use is technology if our children cannot communicate adequately and appropriately? Research has shown that
let me hold you there for a bit, Ms. Obafisoye. We'll take a quick break, and of course, when I come back, you'd take us more on how communication is pretty much key.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying with us. We still have with us our panelists right here in the Lagos studio as well as via Zoom. Well, just before we went on break, Ms. Obafisoye was speaking about how communication is pretty much very key in the deployment of technology in schools. So if you could quickly round up on that as we wind down on the program. Ms. Obafisoye.
Sorry, I didn't hear you properly. Sorry about that.
I was saying that you were talking about how communication is key in the deployment of technology in our schools. If you could quickly wrap that up.
So I was saying that research has shown that good communication skills is necessary for young people when they enter into their first jobs and even for problem solving. When you talk about collaboration, it is key that our children understand. Now, I'm saying all of this because I know that some schools are quite disadvantaged. Some schools are not very resourced. When we talk about technology, we know that some schools, you know, do not have adequate access to this.
Yeah.
So you want to look at communication, creativity. You want to look at collaboration. How do you work together in a team? You cannot get away with that.
All right.
You know, if you're not appropriately equipped to collaborate. You want to look at skills like leadership. That is key for the future and even for now. So we need to be intentional about technology. I said all of that because I want us to understand that technology is key, but apart from technology, there are other skills. So I'll talk about technology now.
Okay,
I'm going to
I will
advise
just before you
school owner,
come
go
again.
on, please.
Okay, no. You said you wanted to talk about technology, but I didn't really hear you there.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
So I said technology is key. So when you look at the major jobs for the future that research has shown, and I'm sure that historical data were consulted in coming up with that list. Okay. You have technology as quite frequent on that list. You have well-being on that list. You have data analysis on that list. These are things that are technology-based. So every school, and I must say every parent, every school owner must ensure that appropriate and adequate provision is made. In middle hall education.
Okay, let me just hold you there for Mr. Baxter. So let me hold you there for a bit. Let me quickly come back to Dr. Sam with us in the studio. Dr. Sam, you were nodding your head some time while she was speaking. I wasn't sure if it was in concurrence to what she was saying, but you know, she talked about collaboration, she talked about communication, and then she talked about how technology, you know, is pretty much. But again, one of the things she raised is the fact that you know, some might not be able to meet up. You know, schools, public schools, you know, schools, you know, in the villages and all of that. How do we bridge, you know, that gap that exists at the moment?
Okay. The solution is not far-fetched. You say some might not be equipped, some are equipped. See, another thing is that we shouldn't take the blame perspective. We shouldn't blame anybody what is happening to school. This is the problem, and that is the problem that needs to be fixed. Now, when you have a problem that needs to be fixed, the best approach is to take the researcher's approach. And what is the researcher's approach? Is to look for the problem is existing and look for where the solution is and match them. There are people who are practicing this thing, either this country or outside this country. So the problem statement has been identified that the jobs and for the future are the technological-driven jobs. Now, that's the problem statement. So the approach or the purpose is now to look at it either qualitatively or quantitatively, and search for the experts that are already doing it and find out what are you doing and replicate what they're doing. So government cannot come in there, individuals cannot come in there to subsidize. Knowledge is everywhere, but they have to come in through the researcher's perspective. I wrote some things down like lifelong learning is a concept. Lifelong learning means everybody just have to be learning. From the cradle to your retirement. There's a book I worked on recently that I released recently, The Price of Retirement, is just fresh in the market, talking about a different paradigm shift for the retirees. So for the future as well, so that you can live healthy from 0 to 120 and you are still very fine, or 80 or 90 as the case may be, but it will change the paradigm from being depressed or you don't have job again, or you have issue with poverty. No, that's not the case. Then she talks about collaboration. Collaboration is what we just talked about. Those who are already doing it, what are you doing? Either you go and interview them, or you get their data and analyze it, then you get your results. Then I talk about exposure. Exposure is those who are in the villages. See, everybody in Nigeria ride the same WAEC. Can you think about that? The same jump, irrespective of the school. Curriculum have not changed in that dispensation. So what happens to those who are in forefront and those who we call they are not too informed? It's just exposure. They need exposure to be able to bridge the gap. I talk about relevance. Now, artificial intelligence, sustainability, data analysis, digitalization. You know, before we walk into the bank to do transfer, but these days you do with your sitting down, your mobile phone, you do everything. So these are the courses. Do we have digital department, or we still have the call engineer that cannot even open the bonnet of the cars? And we have to make it relevant. Otherwise, we call it pragmatism. How relevant is that course to today's economy is very important. And I don't want the school to see it as a problem. I want them to see it as a solution. The solutions are everywhere. MIT in the United States of America, they are developing, they want by 2025, nobody goes to school anymore. You do online, and they will still be the best school in the world. Before, the first 10 best universities were in Germany. But today, the first best university are all, they are in the United States and United Kingdom. What did they do? Innovation, relevance to what the economy needs today. So those are the things we need to be doing in Nigeria. And it's everywhere, it's possible. You know, we've all done courses on artificial intelligence. What is this? We've all done courses on sustainability. What is this? We've done courses on innovation and strategic thinking.
Machine learning.
You know, machine learning and all. We've all done so that you don't see artificial intelligence as science fiction. You'll be able to differentiate what is really practicable. Somebody say, I saw robots. You know, you can say the robot Kingsley or robot Vanilla, like a female name. You would think is actually talking. No, you need to know that it's just a robot. For instance, a robot cannot use a staircase.
Well, I mean, we have to put that into practice and see. Like, I mean,
no, you cannot use a staircase, but you can use a lift.
I've never, oh, well, true.
Exactly.
I've never
but when you know the course,
when
you do it, you know what is achievable
and what is
now
not.
And what is going to be achievable in 50 years' time. But we need to be in the game.
All right, let me quickly bring in Mr. Bafisoye just to get your closing remarks now in terms of the online learning. How would you assess that, you know, as we've seen during the pandemic, how would you assess how we did that in the country, just as we wind down now?
Well, I would say that we tried our best as a country. Some schools better than others. It comes back to access to technology, because prior to the pandemic, a lot of schools saw technology as an option. It wasn't a necessity. And then the pandemic came, stripped schools of that option. And it was either technology or technology. In middle hall education, we were able to forge ahead, and I'll say this to you, we were able to replicate every single practice policy that we had. Physically, we were able to replicate successfully to a very good extent online. So I would say that we did well. The government tried. We did well. Public schools they were provided for to an extent. The government did the most that they could.
This will be a good point. Yeah. This will be a good point to round it up. Ms. Ola Yinka Obafisoye, thanks for joining us today on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, Dr. Sam, thanks as well for joining us today on the program.
Thanks so much.
And sharing your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's where we are, and that's where we wrap it up today on the program. We do hope that the future of work, as it has been said, and all the solutions proffered will be put in place, manifested everywhere in schools, and also for graduates who are, of course, without work and are just at home. Technology is there for us, and hopefully we make the best use of it to prepare ourselves for the future of work. Thank you so very much for watching. I'm Victor Matthias.